Welcome to Season 6 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education and need some support. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach and the host of the Get Out of Teaching private membership community, where we support teachers with the resources they need to create a life they love. Find out more at www.getoutofteaching.com. In this season, we'll be speaking with former teachers who have set themselves up in business, as well as business coaches and solopreneurs who can inspire you as you plan your exit, especially if you've been thinking of creating your own business. But I also want to share something with you because many teachers from the United States want to escape the classroom, but have concerns about losing their health insurance. That's where Nate Beer, the insurance pioneer, can help. Nate offers a free 10-minute initial consultation where he can ask you some questions about your health insurance needs and suggest a plan that is just right for you and your family. Any information you disclose is completely confidential and subject to HIPAA regulations. Tick off one of your biggest concerns about leaving education with Nate Beer, Insurance Pioneer. You can book a call with Nate at theinsurancepioneer.setmore.com. Episode 3. Hi everyone and welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm really pleased to be speaking with Erin O'Donoghue, who is an educational consultant helping people to embed Aboriginal perspectives into the classroom. Thanks for joining me today, Erin.
No worries. Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Erin, tell us a little bit about how you got into teaching in the first place.
Actually, it's been a nepotism because my mum was a teacher for a really long time, and she kind of got in my ear about it when I was about 23, 24. And she just said, Erin, I think you'd be a really good teacher. And just the fact that I've always worked with young people and I've always been passionate about literacy and, and education in general, that it was just sort of in the stars, I think. But I started in 2016. I graduated, and that's when I actually officially started as a high school teacher, high school English, humanities, legal studies, and business.
Wow, so it's fairly recent, really.
Yeah, it's only sort of a new sort of gig for me. Technically, but 7 years now. But I worked before that in youth justice and doing crime prevention programs in the community and working within Aboriginal community and stuff like that. Yeah, so it was sort of like I was already working with young disadvantaged youth, and so that was sort of like a bit of a passion of mine. And then that just kind of transcended into the classroom. Just made sense, I guess. So a lot of the same sort of skill sets and things that were required of my previous roles. So yeah.
And so, Erin, where are you located?
I live in Ipswich. My husband and I recently bought a house here because it's where we could afford to buy a house. So it's but it is a nice little area. But I work in Brisbane, so at Waco.
Okay, so Brisbane, for the international audience, is the capital of Queensland, which is the northern part of Australia, the northeast coast.
You can normally tell from my bogan accent that I'm from Queensland. For those that are overseas, I'm a bit of an educated bogan, if that makes sense. But especially compared to your Melbourneites, I guess. But anyway.
And also, no one else in the world would know what a bogan was except for an Australian, I think. So anyway, okay. All right. So we're comfortable with knowing that you've got a house, you're safe, you're all good, and you're working in Brisbane. How long is your commute in the morning?
About 20 minutes. It's not too bad. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Super lucky. Yeah. And that's only been the last 18 months that I've been working at the school that I'm at now, but it's definitely been better than before. I've had to travel, 2 hours by train or, 45 minutes through tolls and things before, just because you're working on contracts. A lot of teachers will relate to that. You just go where the work is. And it's, having just a little 20-minute zip up the highway is preferable, definitely. Yeah, it's been good.
Okay, so tell us about the work that you're doing now in school, in the school context.
So it's I found that a lot of what's being asked of teachers at the moment, and every time I go on PD, teachers are always saying the same thing. And I sort of probably should preface by saying that I'm a Kamilaroi woman, so I'm proud to say that I'm from that mob, and that's that's my heritage. But being on Yuwi Country, it's sort of been something that I've had to go and explore and meet a lot of elders and get their permission to do the stuff that I've wanted to do. But sorry to backtrack, but a lot of teachers are wanting to embed Aboriginal perspectives into the classroom, and it's been a requirement of the curriculum for quite some time. But a lot of it, like we've got a lot of history and we've got a lot of truth telling, and which is great. But there's not so much of how to embed, how to bring that to life for the, for your average teacher. And a lot of the time we're seeing it in English, we're seeing it in humanities, but it's like, well, why can't we have it in maths? Why can't we have it in science and other subjects? So that's sort of where I sort of started. That was the niche that I sort of like clung on to. And so I've created a program that I've distributed to teachers, and it's on a website and blah, blah, blah. But my main goal is to try and get teachers comfortable with Aboriginal ways of learning, and to bring that, into their lesson, regardless of what their subject is. And the bonus of that is, like, not only is it an Australian curriculum requirement, but it's also like just so happens to be super great for literally every kid on the planet. Like I've taught in, like refugee schools, I've taught at Islamic colleges, I've taught in, your normal state schools, private schools, and literally every kid on the planet benefits from Aboriginal ways of learning. It's just a super accessible way to like look at a content and look at the subject, so it's that's where it came from, and that's what I've been trying to like get together with like my side business now. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what are you not doing that? What do you do the rest of the time? Because you're still teaching.
Yeah, I work at the Brisbane Youth Education and Training Centre. So that's the juvenile detention, and so I teach TAFE subjects, so it's like literacy and numeracy subjects at the prison, and so the kids are high school age, but unfortunately a lot of their level will be like of a primary sort of level. So we're doing like course in adult literacy and Cert 1, Cert 2, and just trying to fill those gaps for them so they're able to enter the workforce, able to sort of cope once they get out of juvie, because unfortunately school hasn't been an option for them, or they've been unable to attend, or they've been school refusers, or like just in that systemic cycle of poverty, unfortunately, that we see. And it's not just Aboriginal children, it's all children, but particularly the ones that we've got in juvie, that's what they're affected by. So it's quite sad actually, but a lot of the kids are really beautiful, wonderful kids. They just needed that opportunity for education, and so bringing the Aboriginal ways of learning into that system, into that environment, has been super successful. I've actually just been made permanent, so I just want to like put that out there. It's just like finally, like and we are run through Ed Queensland, so it's a like that is like a set like it's run like a state school sort of thing. So, but it's
okay. So you're basically a state school teacher, but you're going into the juvenile detention system.
That's right.
And you're teaching literacy and numeracy.
Yeah.
You're teaching it like an adult level. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it's actually like it says Cert 1 or Cert 2 in adult literacy, like adult literacy education, but like it's like how to fill out a form, and what kind of like how to get your license, and how looking at workplace health and safety, like things that we probably take for granted, being like normal everyday people that have been raised properly and gone to school every day. That's stuff that we just wouldn't think of, so it's those gaps in their knowledge and their skills that we're trying to sort of fill so they can be functional adults, because essentially they're like 16, 17, but they haven't been to school since like they were like in primary. And so there's just all these they're quite intelligent and they're quite quite able, it's just they just haven't had that opportunity for education, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, are you going to teach them how to do the when you start a new job and they give you the form to fill out for your superannuation? I hate those forms.
We do take them through the tax file number form and stuff like that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot of it is work, like workplace based, because like we're trying to, like we do like a Cert 1 in barista training. That's not me, that's another colleague that does that. We do give them their white card, like as in they go through the white card training, forklift license if they want to do that. And it's very much like, geared towards, we want these kids to get a job so they don't have to do crime, so they don't need to do drugs to escape and things like that. Yeah, so that's the main sort of goal of us at juvie. Yeah,
that's awesome. So it sounds like a really valuable course, and like obviously you're equipping them to leave and leave well.
Yeah, well, and I mean, like, it's kind of interesting that your podcast is called Get Out of Teaching, because that's what sort of got me into the juvenile system, is because I was like, so, I just been, and I'm certain there'll be other teachers who will be on the page as me, is that I was just chewed up and spat out by the contract system. Like, you just, oh, you're doing a great job, we love you, but see you later. The permanent staff members come back off maternity leave and you've got to chuff off, and that happened for 7 years for me. Like, I was just put from school to school to school to school, and I did everything that was asked of me, and I did the job well, got a lot of great references, a lot of cool colleagues and experiences, but I was just like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like, for my mental health, the amount of workload that was expected of me was just crazy. And so I just went, okay, what kind of skills have I got as a teacher, and how can I put that into things that I'm interested in? And so obviously my background with youth justice and stuff, I just immediately went to the youth justice system, and that's where that came up. And so they're like, oh, this is actually run like a state school, and that's how I actually landed on this job. And it was just a bit of a home run for me, to be honest. But it was easy to see once I started looking in that light. Instead of just looking at schools, I was looking in vocational sector, I was looking in educational consulting sectors, like, and it just sort of came up that there's all these different jobs that you can do as an educator, but not necessarily sitting at the front of a state school doing the what would be normally considered a teacher's role. So that's what got me into it, actually. And so that's sort of where that started. And I genuinely encourage teachers now, if they are feeling stuck, to go out and like look at what other skills are transferable for yourself and what you're passionate about, because it just changed my life, honestly, because it's just, I was so unhappy before. Like, I don't want to get into it, but it's the amount of work like the amount of work expected of teachers is just crazy. Like, it is actually crazy. And I just know so many teachers that are trying to get out or get the support that they desperately need. Like, it's a really desperate climate at the moment, for sure.
Well, I think the teacher shortage is going to start. There's going to have to be a shake-up, surely. Surely.
Like, I was on contract for 7 years, like, and I don't think that would happen. Like, say you graduated today and you started working like tomorrow, let's say. I think permanency will be offered sooner than what it was before. I know it's like 2 years instead of 3 years in Queensland, but I think schools are starting to cop on that. It's like, hey, we're actually messing with people's lives here, because they'd cut you off on contract right at the last minute, like, without telling you, oh, by the way, we're not renewing your contract, see you later. So it was just, it's heartbreaking, and it's and you're doing all this work and all this sacrifice and all this personal time, and then only to be told, yeah, you got to move on. So I think the system will change. It'll have to change, because it's in the union. I know the Queensland Teachers Union is doing things like to try and up the pay, to up the support, get more teacher aides in there. It's just like you say, there's got to be a shake up, because people are going, you know what, I can't do this anymore, and I don't blame them, because it's just it's crazy, like actually crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I think every teacher listening to this episode is going to resonate with what you just said.
Like, I'm just certain everyone's going, yep, yes, agree. subscribe, like, yeah, exactly, yeah. So,
okay, so tell us a little bit more about the program that you've created, because that's really what piqued my interest, for two reasons. One is I have a daughter who works in early childhood, and she's half Aussie, half Greek. So my husband's Greek, and we don't have any Aboriginal heritage that I know of. So, but she's expected to bring that into the early childhood curriculum as well. Yeah. And so then there's this kind of, I guess there's a little bit of hesitancy around, am I misappropriating, Koori culture and all that kind of stuff, and also. But I'm also, it's mandated that I have to bring it in. How do I do that respectfully? So she's constantly grappling with that. Yeah. And then the other side of what I want to talk to you about is, how did you actually set this up? How did you create a consultancy? So,
well, so the the program came about, so I've called it Winanga-Li, which is the Kamilaroi word which means to hear, and it's I've made it the Li part of Winaga. Winaga is like listening, but Li is making it a verb. So I wanted it to be like an actionable, pedagogy process that teachers could take on and grasp and be comfortable doing. And a lot of the first sort of sessions that I've created, I've made it free for now because I wanted it to be accessible for everyone, because it is so important that, like, First Nations people and cultures is accessible. It is something that people are going to be, it's not going to cost you $1,000 just to learn something that should have been taught to you in the first place. It's something that should have been in universities, should have been in schools from day one, but it's like, that kind of attitude's not going to help us. And like you just said, like a lot of teachers are they're scared. They love Aboriginal culture. They're keen for it. Like I don't know anyone racist under 35. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say that, but there's a lot of like keen. Everyone's keen, but they don't know how. And so like that's I just sort of put together a couple of video sessions, like explaining some main things that I've come across, like what can I and can't I say. What's appropriate, looking at things from like how to change your perspective in terms of like, okay, this is probably what you're going with, but this is how to do it in an Aboriginal way, and giving examples, modeling those strategies. And and I've just put that into videos for people so they can look at that. And I'm hoping that the consultancy side of it will be, you'll need to contact me and we can like work together, like to help individual teachers, which has happened. I've done that as a trial process in Brisbane. I've had 32 teachers so far contact me, and they've gone, hey, here's my lesson plan, can you help me make this Aboriginal? And so like, and it's tiny tweaks. A lot of the time people are doing great things. It's just let's just do it in an Aboriginal way. And so and like the argument that I've been putting forward is like, how can teachers do this stuff when it hasn't been accessible? Like it hasn't been taught in universities before. Like we've got the 8 ways of learning, which is great, and it's a great little model and system, but there's nothing to tell us how to physically do that. They've given us little examples of how to teach Aboriginal content, but not to teach like To Kill a Mockingbird or like your normal science reporting or whatever. Like there's different ways to tweak it to make it, like, I think I'm getting a little tongue-tied, sorry. No, I think the confusion is like what you said. People are like, oh, I don't feel like this is my place to do this because I'm not Aboriginal myself. That's what a lot of people say. So they're afraid, and then they don't want to be seen as doing the wrong thing. And then there's a way around that, of course, that the program goes into. But it's also, how can I make, a lesson on shapes or a lesson on, I'm just trying to think of some of the examples.
Well, I was an art teacher, and this was look, to be honest, when I started, I don't think it was really a discussion.
No, it wouldn't have
been. But in that
10
years, and I only started in 2006, so it wasn't that long ago. But I think even then, I had a video on how to, but it was not by an Aboriginal person. Like it was, it was an art teacher's video on Aboriginal art. So there was, anyway, I won't even go into some of the things I did that now I look back and go, oh, probably that was really inappropriate. But at the time I was just like, I'm just trying to do my, expose the students in some way to what I knew. And I was looking at, art catalogs and things like that to give examples, like these examples of actual things. That's all we had. We didn't even have any artifacts or anything,
Oh, it's not your fault. And that's sort of been, and I think like another, a good thing about me is that I'm what they call migaloo. So I'm a black fella, but I look white, so I'm very approachable, I've been told, to come, and I've been like sort of a safe person to have these cultural conversations about. And there's a lot of things that people are like, oh, is it okay if I talk about this? I'm like, oh, look, you can, but I would say it like this. And it's just tiny tweaks. Everyone's doing what they can with what they've been given. And a lot of this culture too has been lost, so it's been a journey for most Aboriginal people, particularly for myself and my dad, who's Kamilaroi. So he grew up in Sydney, and he was born in 1949. So he grew up in an era where it was like real shame. You weren't acknowledging that you were Aboriginal because it was, you were ostracized, you were treated differently. So they actually had to pretend to be Italian, so like, oh, why are you so dark? Oh, I'm Italian, when they weren't really. So there's a lot of
okay.
yeah, and it's that's like caused a lot of trauma for him personally. And it's through our, like we've been trying to find and relearn a lot of things that weren't taught to him because he wasn't able to express that as a kid. So it's a constant journey for myself. It's a constant journey for others. And if there's something that I don't know, I always ask permission, or I talk to the community. I talk to elders. I'm involved in a lot of community groups for that reason. And like I said before, with the Yagara, this is Yagara country. So I've had to make those contacts with the elders in this community because I'm not from here. This isn't my country. So it's that's always a really good place to start for people that are struggling. But I'm hoping that the program being free, and there's 5 videos that I've made, and you can use it provided that you've got internet. And I'm hoping that will at least open the doors for some more questions, for some more honest conversation around this topic. And it's something that I've been getting so many hits on the website. It's been great. And I'm just hoping that that's going to, open the gates for people to feel more comfortable with Aboriginal culture. Sorry, last thing I will say before I forget is the other thing I added in the program was ways for Gubba, for white fellas to experience Aboriginal culture themselves. So there's things that you can do to help you connect to country, to help you connect to culture around you in an Aboriginal way that will help you shape your perspective and shape your understanding. Because a big part of the hesitancy, like you say, is a lack of understanding. So that's sort of so I'm on my soapbox, just like full on.
Great. Like, no, that's what I wanted to hear. So I'm curious though, it sounds like you're not making any money in this business. You're offering everything for free. Tell us more about that. How do you get people to pay you?
Well, I'm sort of put it in a context at the moment where I just need that information to get out there. It's just so important, and it's so integral to the educational landscape that we're in, regardless of whether you're in Queensland or New South Wales, whatever, that this stuff needs to be heard, and it needs to be, expressed in a way that's gonna, because everyone's, the price of fuel's up, the price of groceries are going, you can't even get lettuce at Woolies at the moment, let alone pay for $1,000 bloody program, you know what I mean? So it's like, I've just sort of put myself on the line there and gone, look, let's just get it out there. Let's just get the information out. And then if people want me to, consult with their school or do further work, because I've done that in a trial basis in Brisbane with a lot of success. And it's like, if people want me to come in as a consultant in that way, I'm more than happy. And there's schools that have hit me up and gone, oh, look, we'll get back to you in next term with our budget. We'll go from there. And we want you to work with this faculty or whatever. And the QCAA is interested in me rewriting some of their curriculum to put that in an Aboriginal perspective. But it's like most bureaucracies, it just takes time, So it's very much, it's only been sort of this year that I've created Winanga-Li, and I just sort of used my very limited IT skills, but I put it together and just made it in such a way that everyone can access it. And the feedback I've been getting has been incredible. And even elders from other communities that have look, I'd really appreciate you just to jump on and have a look, even if you're not a teacher, just have a look. And I've just been getting, Erin, this is great. Thank you so much for doing this. So it's, you say I'm not getting paid, but I kind of am in a way, that's me contributing back to country and to community anyway. That's just, as a Murray, that's just an obligation that I feel as an Aboriginal person. So it's, I'd say it's just going to take time. Like most businesses are from the ground up, it just takes time. That first year of business is you never make $1 million in your first year. And if you do, let me know what you did. I'd love to know, because it just doesn't happen. But yeah.
Great. Okay. So it sounds like you've had this really rich experience in the last year. When in the middle of a pandemic, you actually created something amazing that is accessible. Is this something that would be obviously this is Australian, but is this idea like suitable for other Indigenous cultures, do you think? Like, is this transferable?
Yeah, I do talk about that. I think around lesson 3, session 3, where I talk about like how language, Indigenous languages, is the key to literally all culture. And so, like, because a lot of, and particularly in Brisbane, I'm sure Melbourne is the same, is that we have so many First Nations people, not just Aboriginal people, but we've got people who are Muslim, people who are Asian, people who are, you know, like, and it's just such a rich experience. And it's, you know, like it's been like, you know, particularly when I worked in the Islamic community and stuff like that, I started learning Arabic and speaking Arabic to the children. And then it's like, oh, miss, are you Muslim? And I'm like, well, no, I'm just trying to, you know, interact with a language or vernacular that you're, you know, comfortable with. And actually what I thought was cool about the Islamic community was that they are so similar to Aboriginal culture, like in the way of their customs and, you know, having, you know, elders that are respected within the community, calling people auntie, uncle, when they're not really your auntie and uncle, but they're just older, and you know, like that sort of, I really got, like, I really kind of just slotted straight in there. It was really interesting. And the way that I did that was through language. And so, like, you know, the second that I started speaking Arabic to the kids, they just lost their minds, you know, they were just like, oh my God, how, this is awesome. You know, like, it just broke down every single barrier that was there, you know. And so, like, you know, and in that exchange of language was an exchange of culture. So I taught them Kamilaroi language and they taught me more Arabic, and then the learning sort of took place as a base of that. So the Winanga-Li pedagogy itself, like, turns out I've been doing that since day one and didn't realize. So it was just a way, I just simply put it into a diagram. You have to excuse the juvenility of the drawing because I did it myself, and I'm not an artist. I'm not an art teacher, unfortunately. Probably could have used your expertise in that one, but and that's sort of like an overview of what my classroom genuinely looked like. So that's sort of where that came from. But yeah, definitely every First Nations kid could benefit from this, and they have, you know, from I've taught African kids, taught, you know, kids from all over, and they just really, it's just, it gives them information or content in a way that's able for them to process it, and it's done in a culturally safe environment. So through the Aboriginality of it is making other children, say if they're from, you know, Sudan or whatever, they're therefore comfortable. So it's just I really, obviously I'm very passionate about it, but it's something that I just think every single teacher on the planet should be doing stuff like this, because it's just, it just makes learning fun too. You end up having a lot more interaction with the content than if you just done, you know, like the rote learning model, you know, that we're all trying to get away from, you know. So
so you mean to say there's a better way to learn your times tables?
Yes. But I mean, you knew that, everyone knows that, like, everyone knows this stuff. It's just, we just got to make it a across the board so everyone can learn it, you know, like, and there's teachers who have said to me, they're like, oh, you know what, I've actually been doing stuff like this similar, but I've just got to put a little Aboriginal spin on it, you know, like, and the other thing I found too is that teachers are like, oh, look, we teach Aboriginal history all the time, and I'm like, well, it's not about Aboriginal content, it's about doing your normal subject but in an Aboriginal way. And that's been the change, that's been the switch, that they go, oh, okay, I understand this now. I'm starting to have a deeper you know, you almost have a kinship with the culture in that way. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually, I love that distinction, that you're actually talking about the approach rather than the content.
That's right. Yeah, because that's what everyone gets stuck on. They're like, oh, well, we always teach, every NAIDOC, we always teach, you know, Aboriginal history and blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, I'm talking about when you're doing just your essay writing, or you're doing, you know, an experiment in science, like, how can we make this Aboriginal, you know? And so that's, and remembering too that the word Aboriginal means original, like, so it's not, you know, like, we need to sort of get away from that. Like you say, it's not just Australia, it's like literally every First Nations people. And like, given that we are the most multicultural bloody country on the planet, you know, it's just crazy that this hasn't happened before, you know what I mean? So it's like, to me, it was just like, well, this is just got to happen. It's got to get out there, and it's not about me making money. It's about getting the information and getting people on board, which so far has been really amazing. Like, I have to commend teachers for giving it a red hot crack, because it's just, you know, that, like you say, that hesitancy, and they're scared, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing, I don't want to look like I'm treading on toes, and it's like, no, you're not, just get, it's cool. Yeah,
awesome. Okay, so as we wrap up our conversation today, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling like they want to, I guess there's, again, this sort of two-pronged question. One is I want to bring more of this learning into my classroom. And then the other one is, what if I want to set up a consultancy of my own in something? So.
Sure. I think when you're looking at bringing this sort of thing, like, or when you're looking at any sort of expansion of your own skills, like I like the saying that when you point the finger at someone else, there's three fingers pointing back at you. So it's like, if you need to look within yourself and be like, okay, where are my gaps in my knowledge, and then be honest with yourself, because there's a lot of things that you might, what kind of teacher am I actually aiming to be? What's my mission here as an educator? Like, do I want kids to be more literate? Do I want kids to be comfortable? Do I want kids to feel safe at school? Like, whatever your direction will be is going to be what sort of pathways you need to take. And that was a big part of what I've done, is that I've just gone, well, okay, this is something that I'm constantly being asked and I'm constantly being approached with by other educators. So that's where that started. And so it's I think you've got to realize your strengths, and you've got to realize how can I instead of like, how can I help benefit others through this? Like, once I've got this skills gap figured out, how can I then give that skill to someone else? So that's sort of, and with the consultancy, a lot of it has been, I kind of put myself out there. I put my hand up to say, okay, I'm going to speak at the next Educators Learning Circle, or I'm going to run the next faculty staff meeting, and I'm going to, I just kept putting my hand up, and people just kept saying yes. And a lot of the time it's like, what stopped me before was that I was like, oh, who am I to say? And who, like, what do I know? I've done all the research and all the PDs and all the extra coursework on the planet, and then just still didn't believe in myself, which was just crazy. Like, and then the second that I started volunteering for things and attending community meetings and just sort of saying, hey, is it okay if I'm the guest speaker at the next one? And then it just went from there. So I just kind of
probably so relieved, Erin, that, oh, thank goodness I don't have to do it.
Yeah, actually, that's been the case. Yeah, then it's like, oh, really? We're actually looking for another speaker. Do you mind doing it? And that's sort of like, that's pretty much how it. And then, of course, people heard me at that one and go, hey, will you come speak at our school? And will you then? And and so then I got some business cards made the website. You got to be have a platform that people can access and look at you, and you got to be transparent. That's the thing. And a lot of people have said that it's very refreshing to have someone that tells the truth, is very honest, and I'm not sort of trying to break the bank too. Like, it's you got to be you got to put yourself out there, and you got to be, you got to kind of be that little bit vulnerable to be strong, if that makes sense. So I've had to and there has been some negative feedback, but I've taken that on and gone and cried in the corner and then come back. You know what I mean? Like, you just got to take, because like that's life. So it's I think just put your hand up, and don't sort of like, if you are thinking about something. And I guess the other thing too is that I got a lot of advice from other people as well. Like, I sought out people in the community, like elders, or like principals that I trusted, and like heads of department, and like even just older people in the community that were maybe retired teachers and things like that. I just had those conversations with people and say, hey, what do you think about this? And this is my perspective. Am I on the right track? And everyone just kept saying, Erin, you've got to do this. Like, this is just crazy that this had, so it was just, I kind of I put my toe in the water in a few different ponds and then just went for it. Like, so that's, you got to, you got to be vulnerable to be strong. So that's my advice. Yeah, for sure.
I love that. I think that's where we should end. Thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today, Erin.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. If you want to hear the conversation that continued after we stopped recording, you'll find that in the After the Bell section of the Get Out of Teaching private membership community, where along with a heap of resources to support you, you'll get access to group coaching with me. Join a community of teachers who are ready right now to plan their exit. Find out how at www.getoutofteaching.com. I've been where you are now, and you don't have to do this alone.